You're listening to Rockland News Afternoon. I'm your host, Tom Osa. Thanks for joining us today. Coming up today on AM Rockland's News, Clarkstown officials are weighing new limits on protest activity at Nanuet's historic Four Corners intersection, citing traffic, safety, business impact, and policing costs as demonstrations there continue to grow. Rockland Boces has broken ground on a $48 million technical education center in West Nyack. Homeowners in Stony Point and Upper Nyack are facing tens of thousands of dollars in repair costs after a water main break and a severed sewer line. And finally, Stony Point Supervisor-elect Amy Conklin Stam has outlined her agenda for 2026. We'll also have an interview with Donald Franchino from Ward 3 for Clarkstown. Again, I'm your host, Tom Osa. We have a lot of things to go over today. As I mentioned just now, Donald Franchino, Ward 3 for Clarkstown. We had an interview with him regarding some discussion about moving the protest activity at Nanuet's historic Four Corners intersection. And he responded to an article that was put out by Rockland County Biz Journal earlier today. First of all, let's get into some of the standard stuff, such as the weather. Today is Friday. It's 50 degrees out and mostly cloudy. The same is going to be happening for tomorrow, Saturday, 55 degrees and mostly cloudy. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, partially cloudy with highs of 53 degrees on Sunday, but lows of 44 on Monday. And then it fluctuates up and down. You can't ever tell when it's going to go up or down until like 5 minutes before these days. But that is the weather. Would also like to thank our sponsors for Rockland's News, Yabu Fence Company, located in West Nyack, New York. Dana Pest Control, third generation family owned, and they can be found at danapestcontrol.com, located in Tompkins Cove, New York. Easy Temp, located in Hackensack, New Jersey, for all of your commercial refrigeration needs. Kobe Sushi with their jazz music lounge, music on Wednesdays and Saturday nights. Visit KobeNewCity.com. Susan Bova from Coldwell Banker Realty, Lauren Molino Muller from Howard Hanaran Realty, Whole Shot Bagels from Haverstraw, New York, and 99 Signs. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, a business without a sign is a sign of no business. You can check them out at 99 Cents. Get your storefront upgraded with them. They also are the sponsors for our show today. Let's get right into the news. As mentioned before, Clarkstown officials are publicly weighing whether to limit or relocate protests at Nanuet's Four Corners, the longtime gathering point for demonstrations at Route 59 and Middletown Road. The intersection has been used for protests since at least the Vietnam War era, and more recently for opposition to the Iraq War in the early 2000s, the Israeli-Hamas conflict, pick a decade, and several large anti-Trump and anti-Representative Mike Lawler demonstrations. One of the largest, the No Kings protest on October 18th, drew more than 4,500 people. According to Clarkstown Police Chief Jeffrey Wanamaker, that event was peaceful. There were no incidents or arrests, and no one was blocking traffic. Organizers from Indivisible Rockland worked with police in advance, used volunteer monitors and neon vests, and later exchanged emails with the department thanking each other for cooperation. Now, according to Rockland County Biz Journal, the issue of relocating the protests surfaced at a November 6th Clarkstown Town Board meeting and also at a subsequent Nanuet Civic Association meeting at the Nanuet Library. Supervisor George Holman and Councilman Donald Franchino for Ward 3 of Clarkstown say that they're concerned about complaints from nearby businesses, heavy traffic at the busy commercial intersection, and rising police overtime costs when large protests are held there. Holman raised the idea of moving protests to other public sites, and Donald Franchino, in an interview that we're going to provide on this podcast momentarily, he described his suggestion in more detail. He said that he's attended recent protests at the intersection and observed that cars travel through the area at high speeds while officers are focusing on keeping things civil. So we'll have that full interview without any edits. We don't do edits. We're not into them. It's a waste of time. Let's get the exact wording out there, And of course, this is something for public discourse. We'll move on to the next item. Rockland BOCES has broken ground on a new $48 million technical education center at its West Nyack campus. The planned building would include an expanded culinary program, a gym, and additional classroom space. BOCES officials say many students who apply to its career and technical education programs cannot currently be accommodated because of space limitations. According to News 12, soon-to-be graduates indicated they expect larger facility area to give more students access to vocational training. Senior Mary Ludwig noted that Rockland BOCES is one of the smaller C-Tech programs in the state and, however, said it is nice to see that it's growing and evolving for the future. BOCES expects the new center to open within about 2 years. Homeowners in 2 Rockland communities are facing large out-of-pocket costs after infrastructure failures, while questions over responsibility are remaining unresolved. In Stony Point, a September 25th water main break at Route 9W and East Main Street sends water down the hill and into the sewer system, backing up into 5 homes, as well as the Rose Memorial Library, which is located right across from Stony Point Town Hall. 3 East Main homeowners told News 12 recently that they face roughly $250,000 in combined remediation and repair expenses, including one landlord who has already spent about $30,000 to make a rentable unit habitable again. Veolia, the water company, says that its insurer's claims adjuster will decide on the claims by the end of the month. And in Upper Nyack, homeowner Harry Vetter paid about $12,000 after a sewer line serving his house was severed during a village catch basin replacement project at High Mount Avenue. The village engineer wrote that there was no doubt the line was broken by contractor Green Meadow Enterprises, but the company later declined to perform repairs, saying the line was unmarked and did not meet current code, and that sewer work was not part of its contract. Both the village's insurer and the contractor's insurer denied liability. Upper Nyack's mayor expressed sympathy for Vetter, but said that the written responses from the engineer and insurers are the village's only comment. And finally, on our previous podcast, we had Stony Point Town Supervisor-elect Amy Conklin-Stamm, who takes office in January of 2026. And in a recent interview with Rockland News, she outlined her priorities ahead of her first town board meeting, which will be held on January 13th, typically at the Patriot Hills Community Center. In a post-election interview, Stamm said that one of her main concerns is the rise in housing rentals and illegal construction, including single-family homes that have been converted into multifamily rentals that she says may be unsafe and out of character with surrounding neighborhoods. Conklin-Stamm plans to work closely with the building department and said that a newly hired full-time and a newly hired part-time code enforcement officers, are completing state certifications in order to allow more independent enforcement. And on the economic development side, Conklin-Stamm said that Stony Point's limited available land makes it unlikely to attract large commercial projects, and she sees small businesses as the town's strength. She pointed to already funded streetscaping plans and would like resident and business input on beautification measures such as planters and benches, with larger upgrades dependent upon Department of Transportation approvals. Okay, so that's the news that we're here to report, but we have a little bit more. Approximately an hour ago, I reached out to town of Clarkstown Supervisor George Holman, as well as Donald Franchino, in the Rockland County Business Journal article that was posted today. As I mentioned before, the citing of discussion about the possibility of moving the protests that occur typically at the Four Corners, as it's called, Nanuet, Middletown Road, and Route 59. So there's some historical context here, and not to be into the whole gonzo journalism thing, but before we got into the news, and I'm talking about literally like about 20 plus years, maybe 22 or 23 years ago, if some of you recall the Iraq War that occurred in the early 2000s, and in my opinion, kind of dragged on just a tad. Um, there were protests during that time. So I have witnessed firsthand the protests that occur at that corner. What we wanted to do in this case, and I'm towing a fine line here because I definitely want to make sure that all we're doing is reporting and we're not providing our opinion on anything because this is a sensitive matter. However, and I strongly encourage people to visit for context of both sides of the story. Certainly, the interview that we'll be providing with you momentarily with Councilman Ward 3, Donald Franchino, but also just to fully flesh out both sides of the story, please take a look at Rockland County Biz Journal, the article about the discussion about the possibility of moving the protest to another location. So without further ado, we have this interview with Don Franchino. We're live streaming it right now. If for some reason you cannot hear the interview, because we loaded it up as a media file, if you cannot hear it, it will be available on Rockland's News today at approximately 5 p.m. Rocklandsnews.com. You could also do a search for it on iTunes as well as Spotify. Just do a search for Rockland's News and you'll be able to get the audio on this particular issue. So I find it of interest, both sides of this discussion. Without further ado, here is our interview with Don Franchino.
I put out a suggestion. I was there for the protests, and I saw what went on and how fast some of these cars go by. They don't slow down at all. And the police are not there to monitor the traffic. They're to keep everything civil. So what I suggested is, for the benefit of the businesses that are affected by this, is that the protests be limited to 2 hours on a Saturday and 2 hours on a Sunday, from 8 to 10 in the morning. And then when the businesses start to fire up, everybody leaves. It keeps the business owners happy. And again, the business owners, people approach, like Shake Shack and the rest of them to use the bathrooms because there are no bathrooms there at all when you're on the four corners. So my suggestion out there is let's come to a neutral, happy ending and have protests on Saturday and Sunday morning, limited to 8 to 10 a.m. in the morning or 9 to 11. It doesn't matter, but everybody clears out by noontime. Mm-hmm. And that's when the lion's share of the traffic starts in that commercial area. And it's a miracle nobody's been injured up to this point. But these protests and demonstrations seems to be growing. And it's only a matter of time before something happens. And I'm not saying intentional. It could most likely be accidental with people driving the cars through this area. We can't close the roads because one's a state road. The town roads, when people do that, they have to file a permit and provide insurance. None of these groups, whoever they are able to do that. So I suggested to George that let's limit the time to the quiet time when there isn't a lot of people on the road and the chances of an accident happening are greatly reduced. So that was my suggestion. And then an extreme suggestion is move it up to RCC and let people demonstrate and protest there on the college campus. It's out of the way, and but there seemed to be an infinity to the four corners in Nanuet, and I said, well, then we're going to restrict, the time and the availability as to when you can be there.
Got it.
And it's mainly for a safety issue. Have you been there when the protests have gone on?
I have been at protests in the past. For instance, in the 2000s, there was typically protests against the Gulf War. I remember historically there was, I'd say, a contingent of several hundred people per Saturday weekend. That actually went on for, I believe, about 2 years, maybe 3, from my recollection. The Panera Bread that's still there is what was a place where a lot of individuals would go afterwards in order to grab lunch and discuss various things.
Okay, yes. But what I'm going to do, because since this thing is going to become an issue, I'm going to go out and solicit each one of the business owners and say, do they have an issue with parking being taken by whoever's demonstrating or whoever's on the corners? The parking lot fills up and it denies them customers. So I said, the one customer that I spoke to, the tenant, if I limit it to 8 to 10 in the morning, he said, that's fine. You know, we don't really fire up until noontime. But when we do, and everyone is still out there, nobody has parking spaces, you know, to go into the businesses. So, you know, and then it's a burden on Clarkstown with the police that we have to supply. You know, police out there to monitor the traffic, make sure everything stays civil. And nobody reimburses the town for those expenses at all.
Now, does the town of Clarkstown have a permit process for people that want to assemble, assumingly peacefully? Do they have? Is there a process? From what I understand from the article that was just mentioned, RC Biz Journal mentioned that Indivisible Rockland typically interfaces with the police that are on site. Certainly noting what you said about that their responsibility is not to handle traffic, but is there a procedure when a protest of this particular size at that location assembles?
There is. You would file a permit with the town, provide your insurance, you know, which I think the biggest issue is insurance.
Uh-huh.
Nobody has insurance. No one has insurance. So, and that's our concern. If you know, an individual in a car, I'm not talking about an individual walking down the street, but in a car, loses control for whatever reason, is they're looking, taking pictures with their cell phones, and they make a mistake. And next thing you know, the vehicle jumps the sidewalk and strikes several people. That has not occurred, but the possibility of it happening just increases, you know, as these protests grow. And that's where my concern is. Not only for that, but also for the shop owners that are there. You know, you went into Panera Bread. What happens here, people are looking for bathrooms. And there are none provided, you know, by any group that comes there. So they use the businesses. They go into the business, and it's up to the business to restrict, you know, usage of their bathrooms. If you're going to be a customer, that's one thing. But if you just want to go there to use their bathroom, they can restrict that, you know, on their property.
Yeah, because each individual business, they're operating their own entity.
Correct. And when you have people gathering on the corner, and they're not only gathering on the corner, it's stretching up 59, all the way to the Nanuet Diner. So it's just not limited to the four corners. It stretches out. And when I was there, I ended up parking up behind the back of the mall where the old Sears building is. And I walked down, and my objective was to get to Stop and Shop, which forget it. It was impossible, so I just left. But I want to, you know, I want to come to a happy medium between the landlords, Brixmore, and Nanuet Town Center.
Are there any particular businesses that specifically voiced their concerns with you and or the town?
It was only one that I had gotten. The initial thing was, I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to canvass them. I'm going to go through the businesses on Monday and because I'm open on the 17th and the 18th, so I'm going to canvass the businesses, and then I'm going to meet with Brixmore and Nanuet Town Center, saying, is this a growing issue for you? With the amount of people, do they frequent your store? Or do they just pick up and leave, or just come in to use the bathroom? You know, what have you. But that I'll get a better understanding on the 17th and 18th when I walk the streets. That's what I usually do. You know, I walk the streets, I talk to the merchants, like in Nanuet with parking on Main Street, and there's no available parking for customers. Well, I found out most of that parking is from their own employees. So we opened up the MTA lot in Nanuet behind the post office for people to park. And I've instructed, the merchants, have your employees park in the MTA lot. We have designated parking spaces. They're free. The only thing you have to do is walk to the businesses on Main Street, opens it up for your customers. And it's like talking to a brick wall, if any of them want to listen. Here, too, on the four corners of Nanuet, we have to supply police, all right? And the amount of time and overtime that we're paying is getting to the critical level. And I said to the county, it's not fair that Nanuet has to absorb these costs, or Clarkstown has to absorb these costs to keep everyone safe. And thank God people have been civil and not gotten out of control. So my next issue is traffic, is vehicles driving through this area and people getting frustrated that all of a sudden they're in a traffic jam. And it's thank God nothing's occurred up to this point. But I want to come to an agreement, an understanding that we limit the time that you're there. We're not banning you, but we're going to limit the time that you're there.
Right. So it sounds like this is a negotiation to come, as you mentioned prior, to a happy medium in order to make sure that both sides of the coin are taken care of. Now, in having that open dialogue, is that something that, for instance, the permit process that you mentioned is, and according to the RC Biz Journal article again, they cited a particular group, Indivisible Rockland. Are they the ones that typically apply for the permit, or is it just an individual, or?
It's hard, that's hard to govern because we don't know where these people are coming from. Indivisible Rockland, if they want to take the bull by the horns and permit it, issue the permit, I don't think they're willing to do it because you got to supply insurance. When you file a permit, you got to have insurance showing that you are insured against any type of accident occurring.
Right.
But we're going to bring it all together.
So now, but going back to this, you'd mentioned prior about that somebody's applying for a permit. Like there is a permitting process, or is it that? Yes. Okay. So is that the?
Like this, we don't know how many groups are out there. We have no idea at all what groups are involved, or they're just individuals. And with the internet, it's very easy to communicate. Show up. We're going to have a massive protest in Nanuet on the four corners, and that's great. But without insurance and, protecting the general public, because people that show up are assuming that they're protected.
So the big issue is insurance. Absolutely.
That and the businesses that are affected by the people that do show up. So, and I know where I am in Massachusetts, where the farm is, they have protests every weekend in the center of town, but they're limited to the time that they can congregate. And that takes a huge burden off the village, the town rather, and the police department.
Have there been any precedents before when protests happened back in the 2000s or prior? And, again, according to the article, going back to the Vietnam War, there were protests at that Four Corners area. Have there been any precedents for indicating that time or date or any of the typical items that you're mentioning to contain, if you will, the protest? Have there been any measures that have been enacted prior to this point?
Not that I'm aware of. All right. But again, these protests seem to be growing. And, the number of people that are showing up. Like, for instance, you do the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Pearl River. All right. Huge. They can get 16 to 20,000 people there. And they have to permit for that. But the organization has insurance. And they're the only organization involved. Here, we don't know what organizations are coordinating this. We know nothing. All we know is on the internet, show up to the Four Corners in Nanuet. And, we would like to know who's coordinating it, who is taking the responsibility for it.
Gotcha.
Because ultimately, there's going to be an accident. There's no question about it. I mean, the police, I talked to Jeff Wanamaker, and he says, Donald, it's a growing headache. And I said to him, what if I limit the time? That if we contain it to Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings. He agreed with it. They said that would help contain everything. All right, but not going on to 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're just asking for trouble.
Okay. And last question for you. Running into various scenarios, we're always hoping for a happy medium here at Rockland's News. But looking into various scenarios, suppose that there's opposition to the idea of limiting the time. Would there be any security measures, or if, let's say, for instance, if a protest becomes more large in nature, they don't necessarily comply with what you're indicating that that Clarkstown or at least your particular ward would want? What would be the corrective measures? Would there be arrests, or I'm just trying to think out how a person would be fined or just asked to leave?
That's all difficult. That's all very difficult. And that's the problem with this. Would we post the area, the corners that are involved? That was my suggestion. Besides being on the internet and getting in touch with various organizations saying we want the protests limited to a time of day where the traffic on the road is not as cumbersome. So, yes, Sunday morning is quiet. There's not much traffic on 59 and Middletown Road. Then Saturday morning may be a little bit busier, but it's limited to those hours in the morning before the stores open, before traffic is ongoing, which is, once, again, the stores open, people come to shop, whatever, not knowing that there's going to be a protest that day. And that's what I want to limit is the safety issue.
Okay. Well, Councilman Donald Franchino, Ward 3 for the town of Clarkstown, thank you for being on Rockland's News this afternoon for clarification, and we welcome you back to the show in the future.
Anytime. Thank you, Tom.
All right, thank you. And that was Donald Franchino, councilman for the town of Clarkstown. That's Ward 3. I've actually known Donald for about 10 years now. He used to have an Allstate business located in Clarkstown. He might still. I haven't kept up to date as far as that particular part of our collaboration. We will continue to follow this particular story. The nice thing about Rockland News is we can pick up the stories that we are interested in and really just try to, as best as possible, get both sides of the story. Do have to want to thank other news outlets for today's news. For instance, like the water main break that occurred up in Stony Point, that was reported by News 12. As I mentioned before, this story about the Four Corners protest, that particular one was broken by Rockland County Biz Journal. So that's part of our network. I also want to thank the newly minted rocklandspost.com for posting a plethora of articles, typically regarding politics, but there's a whole variety of them. If you go over to rocklandpost.com, you'll see that there's some updates. Senator Weber is hosting a small business roundtable coming up soon. And actually, you know what? I apologize that there is live video on there about things that are going on. So this is Keith Schickowitz and Robert Joasis that are working on this. Robert posted an article on November 11th about the Mount Moore Cemetery, the special service that was held on Veterans Day, Tuesday, November 11th. And I'll just read a little bit of the article. Mount Moore was established on July 7th, 1849, when James and Jane Benson deeded the land to three local men, William H. Moore, Stephen Samuels, and Isaac Williams. Over the years, oh, stop it, Google. Over the years, the cemetery became the final resting place for about 300 men, women, and children, including 32 veterans who served in every major American conflict, from the Civil War throughout the Korean War. And one of the most remarkable stories of that was of Solomon E. Miller, born in 1843 in Amsterdam, New York. Miller served as a Civil War substitute hired by another man to take his place and was present at the surrender of the Army of Northern Virginia at, and those of you history buffs, you know this word, Appomattox Courthouse on April 9th, 1865. So it's a really fascinating article. That's at rocklandpost.com. Look for the November 11th post, and that was done by Robert Joasis. We were hoping to have him on today. I have been swamped with work. We are still doing a lot of work for Rockland Music Fest, as well as our first business, Rockland Web Design, this business, Rockland's News, and coming in December, Rockland Shopping. That's right. We're doing our 5th Holiday Expo, a variety of different retailers across Rockland County. And if you're interested in joining us for this Holiday Expo, which is going to be on Cyber Monday this year, go visit rocklandshopping.com. And we are furiously working behind the scenes to get that all ready for you. As soon as Thanksgiving is done, we're going right into shopping season, and hopefully everybody will enjoy. So there's one other item that I wanted to bring up, and we haven't really talked about this much, and it has to do with Rockland Music Fest. As some of you that have listened to the show over the last 6 months know, I'm very interested, invested, and sometimes obsessed with growing our music community in Rockland County. And something that I said over the music festival that was held on September 27th over at Clover Stadium. We had about 1,200 people there, give or take a few. And we were able to raise a considerable sum of money for Meals on Wheels Rockland. At that event, I mentioned that being at a music festival, it's something where all the stuff from the outside just shouldn't matter. We deal with a lot of stresses of life, personal, professional, worry about what's happening in our local area, of course, safety issues, concerns with neighbors. Oh my goodness, you posted a very toxic Instagram, all that stuff from A to Z. Music festivals, I've always found them to be really cool. And that's basically what we're really aiming to do. But we also have a charitable component that's included in every one of our music festivals that we've done since 2015. Actually, the first one we just got together and hung out in a park. 2016, we started putting together charitable recipients for the festivals that we do. So our charitable recipient for 2025 Rockland Music Fest that was held at Clover Stadium was Meals on Wheels Rockland. And I am happy to report that we have been able to raise $5,000 for Meals on Wheels Rockland. And as I speak, that money is already in the hands of Meals on Wheels. I'm really happy about this. I got the chance to meet up with Sharon, William, and a variety of other people that are on the board and or are volunteers of Meals on Wheels. Barry Dorfman, Philip Rutigliano. I'm sure I'm missing a few people, but there's so many people that are invested in the success of helping to deliver food to our senior community and also check in on them on a daily basis and make sure that they're okay. So I am overjoyed to announce that as a result of all the work that we did with Rockland Music Fest, we were able to raise $5,000. We're really happy to be collaborating with Meals on Wheels this year. It's been a great time. And I also have to say this, in my opinion, Meals on Wheels also gets a crown for the amount of marketing and advocacy that they did in conjunction with this festival. No other charitable recipient that we've ever worked with in Rockland County did as much advocacy and marketing for Rockland Music Fest. And we didn't ask for it. We were like, we want to do the work, but they also put the word out there through their newsletter, through mentioning it at networking meetings, putting it out on email, social media. I want to thank them. I want to thank Sharon and the board over at Meals on Wheels very much for helping out, because I'm going to tell you, running a music fest is a little stressful. And some of you that know me know what happened behind the scenes, and we'll tell that at another time. But everybody was safe, everybody was happy that was at the music festival. But let's just say sometimes we had to scramble in order to make sure that everything sounded, looked, and everything was just right. We never wanted to have the sound like, where Forrest Gump is saying, well, this is what I think about the Vietnam War. And then all of a sudden the audio goes off. Okay. So that didn't happen. We're very happy about that. And we also have all the numbers that we had to expend in order to make the festival happen. And now we are in planning mode. We'll see if we're going to do it again next year at that same location. I'd love to. So we're in talks about having that happen next year in 2026. And you can learn more about the festival at rocklandmusicfest.com. I am also happy to announce that you have a new streaming TV app that is available to you right now. If you go on Roku and you do a search for Rockland's Music Fest, you can download an app that has all of the performances from all of the bands that performed on that day. Rockland Music Fest, you can download it on Roku. And hey, if you don't have a Roku streaming device, that's okay. We're also loading them up over the next 2 weeks to YouTube as well. So a lot more happening this year with Rockland Music Fest. If you weren't there, you missed out a little bit because it was really amazing, especially Magical Mystery Doors at the end. They played Led Zeppelin, Beatles, and Doors, and light show, huge stage. It was awesome. But if you weren't there, you could check out how it went. So anyway, I don't want to talk too much about that. It's almost 3:30. And yeah, I think that's all we have for today. We got a variety of other things that are happening. On Wednesday, we had an interview with Diane Serator from People to People Inc. We are in talks about helping out with an upcoming food drive that's going to be occurring. And on rocklandsnews.com, you'll be able to take a look at all of the places where you can either donate food to those that are in need due to the current SNAP crisis, or if you are in need, and by the way, reminder, I was there when I was a kid. We got by through the grace of the good Lord and also the help of our neighbors. So places where you can pick up food as well. Various locations, for instance, St. Peter's Food Pantry located in Haverstraw, New York. There's also, for instance, over in Clover Stadium, there are times to pick up food over there. So we'll be posting those to rocklandsnews.com this weekend. And hopefully the federal government is going to be opening soon, but hopefully the food crisis for those that are in need will be alleviated 120% as best as possible. So that's all the news that we have today. I want to thank everybody for joining us on this particular episode. We'll continue to follow the story about the Four Corners protest. Let's thank our sponsors one more time. Yabu Fence Company, located in West Nyack, New York. Dana Pest Control. Easy Temp, located in Hackensack, New Jersey. Our friends over at Kobe Sushi with their jazz music lounge. Over 80 people over there. It's really cool. Plus, we got our favorite realtors, Susan Bover from Coldwell Banker Realty and Lauren Molino Muller from Howard Hannaran Realty. Whole Shop Bagels, located in Haverstraw, New York. 99 Signs. A business without a sign is a sign of no business. Check them out at 99 Signs. Get your signage all spiffy. The Workforce Development Board of Rockland County, FC Perfection Auto Body Repair, Clean Space Maintenance Management Company. My name is Tom Oster. Thanks for joining us today. We'll catch up with you next time. Take care.